My name is Evelyn, 62 years young. For almost 8 years, I've lived alone in a quiet house in Maryland. My children are grown and thriving on opposite coasts, their lives full of energy and possibility. Meanwhile, mine has settled into a comfortable rhythm: tea in the mornings, books in the evenings, and silence filling the spaces in between. I thought I was content with this solitude, certain that peace had finally taken root. At least, until last weekend. It was raining, a steady patter against the windows, when Michael arrived. He wasn't a stranger, but a familiar echo from another time. Long ago, he had been a close friend of my late husband, Daniel, back in their university days. We had exchanged little more than holiday cards over the last decade, our connection fading like ink left in the sun. So when his call came, a warm voice asking if we could meet while he was passing through Maryland, I agreed without hesitation. I suggested a coffee shop, something neutral. But instead, he surprised me. "Hotels are booked because of the festival in town," he explained. "Would you mind if I stayed the night?" There was a pause. Then I said yes. After all, I had a spotless guest room and he was an old friend. When he stepped inside, Michael carried with him the scent of fresh rain and something else, something familiar but long forgotten. His hair was touched with silver now, his beard too, but that same easy smile was unchanged. We stood in the foyer, years unspoken between us, until we began to chip away at them with small talk. Later, in the kitchen, I made tea while he added whiskey to his. We talked for hours, the lamp casting soft shadows. I hadn't realized how much I missed conversation that flowed without effort. That night, as I closed my bedroom door, my heart felt awake again. I don't know what woke me that night. Maybe it was the branches tapping against my bedroom window, or maybe it was simply the awareness of another soul under my roof. Reaching for the glass of water on my nightstand, I froze. Soft footsteps echoed down the hallway. Slow, deliberate. I slipped out of bed, my robe drawn close around me, and opened the door. The hall was dark except for a faint glow seeping out from under the guest room door. Candlelight. My pulse quickened. I walked quietly down the hall and nudged the door open. There sat Michael, perched on the edge of the bed, a single candle flickering on the nightstand. Shadows danced across his face. He looked up, startled at first, then softened. "I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice low and rough. "Too many thoughts." I stepped inside before I could second-guess why. "Are you okay?" I whispered. He nodded, gaze roaming the room. "Just being here again, it reminds me of Daniel, of our youth, of laughter I haven't heard in years." His voice cracked slightly. I stood still, watching the light flicker over him, memories pressing in. He broke the silence again, voice hushed. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line earlier, with your hair." I took a slow step closer. "You didn't." He looked up, eyes tired but tender, vulnerable in a way that unsettled me, not with fear, but with recognition. I realized, standing there in my robe, hair loose and gray at the edges, I wasn't afraid at all. Michael reached for my hand, gently, uncertain. I didn't pull away. His touch was warm, steady. In that moment, the house felt different. Less empty. The candlelight made time itself pause, and for the first time in years, so did I. I sat down beside Michael on the edge of the bed, the candle between us flickering as if it understood the fragile moment. My pulse was steady now, not racing, but alive. "It's strange," I whispered, barely louder than the rain outside. "How quickly silence can begin to feel like company." Michael smiled, his eyes soft. "It isn't strange to me. Some silences are earned." We sat with our hands barely touching, the warmth of his skin grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in years. I'd grown so used to the rhythm of widowhood, quiet meals, one side of the bed always untouched, the hum of my own footsteps in the hall. Now, suddenly, there was someone beside me. Sarah, he caught himself, then shook his head with a small smile. Evelyn. I didn't come here expecting anything. Truly. But being with you again, his voice softened. It stirred something I didn't expect. I looked down at our hands. I don't know what I expected either. But this, whatever this is, it doesn't feel wrong. He nodded. No. It doesn't. We didn't kiss. We didn't even lean closer. Instead, we talked. Hours slipped away as Michael spoke about his divorce 10 years ago, quiet, uneventful, the love fading slowly like a song he no longer remembered how to sing. He admitted he sometimes missed the version of himself who used to dream bigger. I shared my own truths, the first years after Daniel passed, how the house had felt too big, too empty. How I worried about aging, about slowly disappearing into the wallpaper of life. And through it all, Michael listened. Really listened, with a depth that made me feel seen. By the time we leaned back against the headboard, shoulders just touching, I realized something startling. I wasn't lonely anymore. Not tonight. Eventually, the night grew quieter. Not with exhaustion, but with comfort. My head rested against Michael's shoulder, his cheek lightly brushing my hair. I closed my eyes and, for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a widow holding on to echoes. I simply felt present. Safe. When I finally stood, he rose too, walking me into the hallway. Just before I turned toward my room, he reached for my hand. Thank you for letting me in tonight, he murmured. I knew he didn't just mean into the house. I squeezed his hand and smiled. That night, I fell asleep not to loneliness, but to the memory of his voice saying my name. Morning arrived with sunlight streaming gently through the kitchen window. 2 mugs from the night before still sat drying on the counter. I stood at the stove, wrapped in a sweater, waiting for the kettle to sing. The quiet felt different now, less hollow, more expectant. Michael walked in, hair damp from a shower, wearing a simple gray t-shirt and jeans. Somehow, he looked younger in the soft light. Or maybe it was the way he smiled when our eyes met. Smells like tea, he said, voice still rough with sleep. Tea, I replied, pouring hot water into 2 mugs. Unless you'd rather have coffee? He shook his head and sat at the table. Tea's perfect. We sat across from each other, both holding our mugs, both thinking of the candlelit hours we'd shared. Neither of us spoke of it. Not directly. But the memory lingered between us, understood without words. Did you sleep at all? I asked. He smiled faintly. Not much. But I didn't mind being awake. Neither did I. By late morning, the house had settled into a gentle rhythm again. Michael lingered at the kitchen table while I washed dishes, our conversation flowing easily, music, books, little memories from years ago. The tenderness from the night before hadn't vanished, it simply wove itself quietly into every glance, every pause. Around noon, he stood and stretched. Would you like some help with the garden? The patio looks like it could use a little love. I almost laughed. You're offering to sweep leaves on your visit? Maybe I just don't want to leave yet, he said, smiling. So we stepped outside together, brooms and rags in hand. For an hour we worked side by side, sweeping scattered leaves, wiping down the glass table, chasing away a stubborn wasp that seemed determined to test Michael's patience. We laughed, real laughter, the kind that rings through a house and makes it feel alive again. At one point, I caught myself watching him. The way he crouched to pull weeds, the way he stopped to admire a bloom he didn't recognize, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. For a moment, it felt like time had rewound, like we were both younger, sharing a day that belonged only to us. When he finally looked up and caught me staring, my cheeks warmed. He brushed his hands against his jeans, his expression softening. "Evelyn," he said gently, "would it be strange if I told you I don't want to leave just yet?" I froze, the broom still in my hand, heart thudding. "No," I said quietly. "It wouldn't be strange at all." He stepped closer, slowly, respectfully, and reached for my hand again. His touch was steady, his eyes sincere. And in that moment, the garden felt like it was blooming anew. That afternoon, the air inside felt lighter. We carried our tea into the living room, and on a whim, I reached for an old photo album tucked away on a shelf. I hadn't opened it in years. My fingers hesitated on the cover, but Michael's steady presence beside me gave me courage. We flipped through the pages together, snapshots of my children as toddlers, birthdays, holidays. Pictures of Daniel, of course, smiling at picnics, leaning against the old oak tree in the yard, holding our baby daughter in his arms. I expected to feel that sharp ache of loss, the one that used to seize me without warning. But instead, I felt something softer. Human. Michael's hand rested gently on my back, not to console or repair, but simply to be there. The weight of it grounded me. I looked at him through misty eyes, and he smiled in that quiet, patient way of his. "This house has held so much," I whispered. "Joy, loss, love. I didn't think there was room for anything new." "There always is," he replied softly. "Sometimes we just need to open the door again." The words lingered between us like a truth I'd been waiting to hear. That evening, as the sun slid low across the lawn, we sat together on the porch. Long rays of gold stretched over the grass, painting the world in warmth. I brought out 2 glasses of wine, one red, one white. He smiled as I handed him his, and we clinked them softly, without a word. The silence that followed wasn't about absence anymore. It was presence. A closeness that didn't need explanation. For the first time in years, I felt the future wasn't closed to me. Twilight settled over the porch, the air soft with the hush of evening. I sipped my wine and glanced at Michael, the fading light catching the silver at his temples. It struck me how natural it felt, sitting here with him, as though the space between our past and present had folded into this single, quiet moment. "I used to watch sunsets like this alone," I said softly. "Sometimes I even spoke to Daniel, not out loud, but in here." I tapped my chest. I'd tell him about the garden, the kids, all the little things I wished he could have seen. Michael turned toward me, his eyes steady. "Do you still?" I nodded. "But less often lately." He didn't press further, just reached for my hand. His touch was warm, his silence understanding. After a while, he spoke again, his voice almost a whisper. "I don't want to rush you. I don't expect answers. But being here with you, I've felt more like myself these past 2 days than I have in years." I studied his face, searching for doubt, but found none. My lips curved into a small smile. "You don't make me feel younger, Michael. You make me feel real." I hadn't realized how much I missed that. Slowly, he leaned in, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. Our lips met, gentle and unhurried. It wasn't a kiss promising forever, but one that said, "I see you. I'm here." That night, when he asked softly, "Where would you like me to be?" I answered without hesitation. "Come with me." We didn't rush. We undressed the years of loneliness, discovering intimacy not through urgency but through presence, tenderness, and trust. In the morning, he made breakfast. And as I watched him standing at my stove, I realized something simple yet profound: love doesn't follow a timeline. Sometimes it circles back, knocks softly on the door during a rainstorm, and changes everything.